Hey y'all, how you doing? Hopefully you can hear me. I am in my car right now, so I don't know if my speaker or my mic's picking it up. But one thing I wanted to come on here, and I want to share a journey with you. Um, but first I want to let you guys know that um, though I have not been negatively impacted myself personally um, by V1, which I have said on many of these videos to make it clear. It doesn't mean that um, we don't stand for truth and righteousness as Christ followers, right? And so I do want to let you guys know that I do have those who I go to for counsel. I do have those who have permission to say, hey, Nikita, this is just not it. So I do have accountability. Okay. I do have, pastor friends that I can go to and have gone to. And so I just want you guys to know that this is not a dig at any one church, but it is a system issue. And it just so happened that this particular church is where this revealing and the unveiling has happened. But I do want to get on here and I do want to share with you guys because I have had so many people share with me so many different things that have happened to them under this covering. And in their time, in their season, they will be the ones to share it because many of it is very hard. It's very grieving. And I just want to thank each and every one of you who have um, reached out to me personally and have encouraged me and prayed with me and shared with me the details. Some of you have worked for the covering. Some of you served in the covering. Some of you started the hubs. And so some of you have led. I mean, there's just so many different areas under this covering that people have been impacted. And so I just want to encourage you all that you no longer have to be silent. And I say this because I know that many of you have been silenced. I know that many of you have felt that maybe according to scripture or whatever, that you are not allowed to speak out about the abuse that has happened to you in any particular covering. I want to actually share with you my own personal experience under a different covering. And actually, recently, a sister reached out to me that we used to go to a different church with in my area. And she was asking me questions, and I shared with her actually the reason why I left that church. So all the way up to this point. And I realized that was the first time that I actually ever told someone who I went to another church with, where we attended the same church, that experience. So my goal here is to encourage you all that we are all in different stages and phases of scales being removed, of the healing process. Maybe some of us are seeing the signs and considering even the discernment that they have personally received. Maybe not even in conjunction with V1, but just in another church setting. And I want you to know that it's important that you do follow discernment. It's important that you do seek counsel. It's important that I had saw a post that says, if you want to get to know the pastor, get to know the people. And so that's what I did. And you would be shocked, right? And so my hope is that everyone who has spoken to me, that has shared things with me, that you will also find your voice and that you will also be able to speak out. But I don't just want you to speak out on the hurt. I want you guys to speak out on the healing process and where you are at in the healing process. Amen. So there's many different layers to about the church that I went to before V1 Church. Actually, I was getting ready. I was actually not wanting to go to another church because of the spiritual abuse that I had received at the previous church. But I was listening to a couple of prophetic people and apostolic people, and they were basically speaking to my heart, and although they were speaking to like the masses of people, right? The right way to leave a church, also, if you did wrong, to seek forgiveness, and also how important it is to have accountability. So this is not brand new language that I have heard. And so I've always knew that I needed to be in a house that where accountability was going to be possible, that the pastor wasn't going to be untouchable, that because I've been in churches where you had to schedule, a meeting, and the pastors were, out, and it was very hard to get a sit down with them or whatever. And so there were certain things that I was looking for in a church, and I thought that I had found that in V1. And so in the last church that I was at, I had gotten hired to be an after school program. I had never done it before. The person that was previously in charge of this program was recruited by the school. And so my friend had introduced me to the pastor that led this after school program. It was a faith-based after school program in my area. And I was told that, the person that was leaving would be able to help me and show me things. And I really ended up having to be in a position where I had to learn and grasp things on my own because the pastor wasn't really available. The girl wasn't really available. And so I literally had to look online and try to find curriculum and just really learn from the ground up. And so it was a very hard season. And this was before, I want to say this was before COVID. This was before COVID had hit. And so COVID hit, and I thought it was like all done. I thought we weren't going to be doing the after school program anymore. And so, but the school had went above and beyond to make sure that the kids could return to school. There was a lot of safety measures, a lot of cleaning, things that needed to be done. And so the after school program ended up reopening. And when I went back, I knew that we were going to need, help and curriculum and stuff like that. So I forfeited my pay. So that way the person that would come in to be able to help me as a teacher would be able to get paid the way that, they deserve to get paid, and also be able to get the curriculum. And so, there's a lot of things that happened, but one of the things that I ended up leaving, was, and there was a lot of things that built up to this point. Okay. So the woman who runs the school is the pastor's wife. And I had heard a lot of things, but I just wanted to do the after school program and just wanted to teach the kids about Jesus the best way that I possibly could, because I had never been in a position like this before. And we didn't have a room. There was no room that was designated to us. It took us a while to be able to get one. And we were in the lobby doing after school program in the lobby by the church office because it was on the same grounds. Eventually, over time, I had left the church that I was at for different reasons, and similar but different. And so I started investing myself more into this particular church because it was connected to the after school program. So this was during the time when the migrants were coming over a lot, and what they would do is they were actually coming to this particular church, and so the church began to prosper in a way where seats were getting filled and deliverance was happening. A lot of spiritual things were going on in there, some questionable. And I had many questions, and I thought this pastor was going to be like a mentor to me. And so I received permission to do flag worship, prepare Wednesday nights, because I was already at the school. We had started like a flag worship team. One of our sisters did, and she introduced the flag worship to the church, and the kids were doing it, and I ended up picking it up. And so the pastor gave us permission to, prepare the altar and the service and pray over the seats and stuff like that before for Wednesday night. And I started noticing our AV booth. The AV booth would get locked up. They changed the person in charge of the school changed the locks, stopped us from being able to go into the AV. Then we had to sign in, and there was all kinds of reasons for that. And then somebody had came up to me and told me that the wife had said something to them about how dare she go in there and in the auditorium and just, start worshiping and taking over. Not this person, not realizing that I already had permission. And so after those things, you kind of start seeing things kind of unravel a little bit. I was uneasy coming around her. She did not participate in our church services. You actually wouldn't see her unless an evangelist or a prophet came to the church, and she would bring her crew and sit in the front, and it would be roped off. And everybody that was part of the church would be like on pins and needles walking on rocks. And so one day a prophet, quote unquote prophet, came, and he was prophesying and speaking prosperity and all this stuff to the congregation. And the wife stood up, and she had one of her employees stand up, and his wife. And I can't remember if they had their baby in their hand or if they had the baby at that time. I can't remember that specific detail. But what I do remember is that she lifted up the wife and tore down the husband. And I remember my sisters, we were standing in the back, and we were praying in tongues, and we were speaking to the Lord and listening and watching. And we looked at each other like at the same time. And I was like, what is going on? And she took over the whole service. She began to speak to another person. And this whole time, the pastor sat on the platform and was facing sideways, wasn't even looking at the congregation. And I scooted over, me and the other sister scooted over to our other sisters, and we linked arms. And while we were linking arms, we were praying. And she looks over, the wife looks over to me, and she calls me forward. And I told my sisters, I said, I don't want to go up because I don't want to break this prayer chain that we have. I don't want to step up, but I also didn't want to be disrespectful in front of all the people there. And so I broke the chain and I stepped forward, and she began to prophesy over me. And she began to say, the Lord showed her how there was going to be this online ministry for kids and da-da-da-da. And then she said, and I'm going to pay for it. And in my mind, I'm like, well, if this is the Lord speaking to you, then he already has the finances prepared. So for me, I was just trying to piece the word that she was speaking over me together at the same time as she was speaking to me. And so she was asking me questions. And as she was asking me questions, I was responding. And then I could hear the Lord say, "Do not fall. This is not of me." So with everybody looking at me, she tries to activate this prophetic word by laying her hands on me, and she pushed me. But because I had clearly heard the Lord say, "Do not go down, do not fall, this is not of me," I didn't go down. She punches me in my stomach, and I go down to the ground. And I look up at her and I said, "Did you just punch me?" And I got back up, and with eyes filled with tears, I turned around and I walked out into the lobby area. And the other sisters came after me. And she was like, the sisters were like, "We're ready to go. Like, let's just go." Because our plan was to go eat after. And the pastor's the pastor's mom comes out into the lobby area where we're at. And she's so sweet and she's so loving. And she prayed for me and Phil when we were, while we were divorced and separate and stuff like that. She is a prayer warrior and she's so sweet. But she came up to us because I think that she kind of knew. I think she kind of knew something. But she came up to us and she said, "Where are you guys going? Don't leave. Your pastor needs you. Watchmen cannot get off the wall. Don't get off the wall." And so we looked at her and we're like, okay, our pastor needs us. So we need to go back in there. I'll tell you, the remainder of the evening was very, very strange. When we went back to my sister's house, and we talked about everything over, we were just amazed. And that was kind of like my first introduction to all this, right? like, whoa, you know? And during this time, I had been watching and learning from other prophetic and apostolic voices about the Jezebel spirit and Ahab and spiritual warfare. And, so I wasn't like completely ignorant, but there were certain things that I was just like, whoa, what is this? And luckily I had other sisters who were older in the faith. They had been in the faith longer and they were adept to spiritual warfare and prophecy and deliverance and demonic stuff and stuff like that. So it wasn't like I was just left to my own devices to create things. I was able to ask questions and process what happened. And I remember clearly it was my birthday weekend and I got a call from the pastor. And he began to belittle me and he began to berate me. And he began to tell me how disrespectful it was that I was speaking back to his wife and I need to have more respect. And I was like, "But you weren't even watching." Like I was explaining to him because in my point of view, I thought that he was my mentor. So we had conversations with each other before where I was able to ask questions and, I was able to respond in a way where like he didn't take like offense to it, And so I was talking to him like how we would normally have conversations. And I said, "Look, Pastor, you weren't even watching. You were sitting sideways." And he was like, there's video. And I was like, "Well, send me this video because it'll clearly show exactly what happened. If there was video, you'll see that she punched me." And so I'm sitting in my car and I'm upset and I'm in tears. I am crying. I'm shaking, and I'm sitting in front of my kids' daycare because I had to go pick them up because we were going to go camping. Phil was going to take us camping for my birthday. And I remember getting off that phone call, and I was so completely devastated. And I knew that I was going to have to go back to the after school program. And I was like, I'm not going to let this impact me. I'm just going to, be there for the kids. And that whole birthday weekend, I stayed up watching everything about Jezebel, everything about spiritual warfare, everything about everything, trying to find answers of what happened to me and why. And so there was a lot to that conversation, but it left me shaking. It left me confused. It left me feeling very overwhelmed. It left me my mind was so, I couldn't even enjoy my birthday. I said, just take the kids, just take the kids out, let them go enjoy. I'm going to be in here. I'm going to read my Bible. I'm going to pray. I'm going to worship. It was a lot, you guys. And so, I come back and I have to, go back to work. And everything that transpired after that was, I know that it was spiritual. I know that it was, warfare, because, I had heard other things about things that were going on, and I should have listened, and I didn't. And, being immature and just saying, well, I'm just going to go in there and I'm just going to do the things that I need to do and get up out of there, right? Do the things the Lord has called me to do. And so I remember my oldest son, Willie, and another boy, they were playing football and they had gotten into a fight. So I called the pastor. I said, hey, pastor, can you please come down to the school and help the boys kind of reconcile this situation? I've already talked to mom. She's in agreement. And so he does. He now the details of this, when I talk about order, because it was just so much going on at one time, I might mess the order of things up. But so there was supposed to be a phone call between the pastor, my son, and this other boy. Well, when the phone call happened, the boy was not there. And this was during parent-teacher conference. And we had finally gotten a room. And I was in the classroom with the kids. And we were watching a movie. And we were going to have a discussion after. And my son comes in. And he slams the phone on the table. And here, take this. And I'm like, Willie, you need to be respectful. Like, what's going on? I still don't know what this pastor said to my son. My son has not told me about it till this day. And so I got on the phone with the pastor and I was like, hey, what's going on? What happened? What did you say? He said that he told my son that he wants an apology letter or something to that effect. And that if he doesn't do it, then he is in disobedience. I think my son was in what grade is he in now? I think he was in 6th grade. I think this was 6th grade year or 5th grade year. I can't remember. And I was like, okay, he'll write the letter or whatever. And then he started going on this tangent about how there's disobedience in my household, and with disobedience, there's witchcraft. And if he doesn't do this letter, then you're in disobedience. And he was like, and if you want me to be, his, what did he call it? His spiritual father, then you need to give me permission to paddle him if he doesn't do this. And I said, spiritual father? I said, paddle him? I said, for what? He's going to write the letter. and witchcraft. Like, what are you even, it's a pastor. What are you even talking about? Like, I just called you so you can help the boys resolve this issue. Like, how did it come to all this? And mind you, I had him on speakerphone walking down the hallway, and teachers were listening to this, and the principal was standing down at the end of the hallway, and I it was not a pretty conversation between he and I. Let's say this. You can't wait. Can I get a cupcake? Yeah. And so I went back into the classroom, and I was like, okay, let's just let's just move on from this, right? And I'm still like upset with Willie because I'm like, don't be disrespectful. And so a woman comes in and she takes over the after school program for me, and she says, the pastor is on his way. He wants to speak to you. So I'm like, okay. So he comes in, he storms in, and he's all, you come here. So I'm like, oh, great. I'm in trouble, right? And so he pulls me into his office. It's just me and him. There's no other person in there. Just me and him. And he begins again to belittle me and talk about witchcraft in my household. And I said, I bind it. I will not permit you to speak this over my household. And I said, and he goes, why don't you take like a sabbatical? Why don't you just take some time off? And I said, how about this? How about I quit? Because I'm not even getting paid for this. Like, you can't fire me. You can't, you know what I mean? I'm solely serving. And he goes, no. How about you just, I said, no, you just spoke witchcraft over my household, said that there's disobedience and all this stuff. And I don't even know where this is coming from, but I'm not going to receive it nor accept this. And I said, and if you ever speak that way over my household again, everybody is going to know about this. And so I walked out. I was upset, and I may have mishandled that wrong, but I was so overwhelmed at that moment that I was just in disbelief in how this occurred. And so I'm in the car and I am weeping. I got to go pick up my kids. I am shaking. Actually, I think my kids were with me because we were, at this time they were going to school. They were going to the school. So they were in the car with me, and they're like, what's going on? And, I'm ignoring them. And so the pastor's wife calls me. And she goes, hey, sweetie, like, or hey, I heard what happened. What's going on? And so I'm explaining to her, I said, what he just did was not okay. And so I tried explaining it to her, and she went from the sweetest person to ripping my head off. And she goes, if you ever tell anybody about this, we got video of what you did, and and we'll take you to court, and And so this was their way of silencing me. But I can tell you that it didn't end there, because I did disconnect my call with her. And she sent me like books of text messages after that. You're the victim, And I was just so overwhelmed and so bombarded with everything that had just happened that my mind was just, it was an overload. And I couldn't even settle down when I got home. And the point of me telling you all this is because you're not alone. You're not alone. There are, and this didn't just happen to me. This happened to other women in the church, that are on my friends list to this day. And I'll tell you, they were like, you have to cease and desist, something like that. And of course, me being ignorant, not understanding legal terms, I was like, man, you know what I mean? Like, what is going on? But I'll tell you, it took a while for me to heal. Like, there's different phases of healing that I had to go through. I went through all the grieving all the grieving phases. I cried, I got angry, I, posted things, you know what I mean? And, had to repent of some things, and the hurt was so deep that like I swore church off. I did not want to be a part of church, but because I was still continuing to learn from other apostolic ministries online, and I didn't want to fall away from the church, because I know that not only do we not have a perfect church because it's filled with imperfect people, right? Even in leadership, I also knew the importance of having people to speak into your life, in a way where if you were going to go down the wrong path, that they were able to course correct you, right? And if you were somebody like me, like there was times where I would write prophetic things in a notebook and stuff like that because somebody taught me that. I knew that I needed iron sharpening iron. I knew I needed to grow and be mature in the faith, and I wanted that. So I remember having a phone call with Sandra, my friend Sandra, not connected to V1. This was way before V1. And I said, I just pray for me that the Lord brings me to an apostolic covering and an apostle, and she was like, but why do you need that? You can go to church, you can read your Bible, you can pray, you can get connected into, fellowship. And she was like, I was like, I understand, but I need a covering. I need I need accountability. I need all these things. Right. And so, looking back, it was like, man, we hear this phrase, there is purpose in your pain, right? And I'll tell you now, because even sorry, my phone was reconnecting. I have people now that are speaking, into my life positively, and they're like, Nikita, you really need to make sure that you are, that you're healed, because and it's true. You don't want to do something, right? Unless you have some sort of healing in that area that you're talking about, right? And I understand. And I want you guys to know that there are various stages of healing, right? There are times now when because our town is pretty small, I'll come up behind maybe that pastor's car and I'll see her license plate and I'll go into like a straight panic for like 2.5 seconds. And I'll go like, Lord, I forgive her. I forgive her. You know what I mean? Or I remember one time during boxing, we were running around the thing and I saw the pastor and I was like, I need to run up to him and tell him I forgive him, but I never did. And I was like, you know what, Lord, I forgive him. Like right there in that moment, right? And it's a process. Sometimes you have to repeatedly say, I forgive them, they know not what they do. And I want to encourage you guys to do the same thing. I know that it's reconnecting. I know that it's opening up a lot of wounds. And I want to tell you, don't speak out of your woundedness, but speak out of your healing. Speak out of the lessons that you've learned. And I'm hoping that. Awesome. Bye. I am hoping that those who were impacted by this ministry and other ministries, okay, will not only share their testimony and their side, right, but they will share their healing process and what part of their healing process that they're in. Is it the early stages of healing? Is it months of going through healing? I mean, there are people that have shared with me that they have had to go through therapy, right? That they have had to go through deliverance with another ministry, right? And so I want you guys to come to a point where you can share what happened, but share what you are doing in the process of healing and reconciling. Many of you have left the church, right? Churches, the local churches or the online churches, and you've found a different ministry, or you've gone back to the ministry that you left, right? And so there is healing on the other side of this. I want to promise you that it is. And so there was a point where I had to go to the ministry that I went to that I left to go to this specific ministry. And I went back to the pastors and I said, I apologize for how I left. I apologize, because I didn't understand how to deal with the gifting that the Lord gave me, right? I wasn't mature enough to know how to handle certain things. And I asked for forgiveness. And that's important. Like I even saw them like driving past one time. I'm like, hey pastors, like, hey, because I want to make sure like there's no hard feelings. Like we have to go through certain lessons in life. And the fact is that when there's no perfect person, so there's no perfect Christian, right? There's no perfect ministry because there's no perfect people, right? But that doesn't mean that you have to be silent with abuse. Don't let no one silence you about abuse, but use wisdom. Use wisdom. Ask the Holy Spirit for wisdom. It's so important, right? And ask him for peace, because there are many other stories out there and other testimonies, and they are looking to those who are healed or who are healing to see, how do I get through what I'm going through right now, right? Who can I talk to? Who can I turn to? And just know that not only are you not alone, but there is healing on the other side. And never give up on God's people, right? The word says to pray for our enemies, right? And not that they are our enemies, but they are people that have hurt us, that have caused hurt. But something that's really important that I remember is not, and it's in one of the teachings, it's not the church at large. It's not the big C that hurt us, right? But it's people within the big C that has caused hurt or harm. And so that's something to remember. It is important for us to be in fellowship with other believers, like-minded believers, right? But don't be silenced. If there's abuse happening, speak about it. Go to someone, right? If you can't go to the leadership, go to someone who you can trust, right? And know this, that there is going to be backlash. There always is. Because at the end of the day, if anybody's in deliverance, right, you know that the enemy doesn't want these types of things coming out. So the enemy will do anything to silence you, right? He will do anything to discredit you. He will do anything to get you confused and get you questioning certain things. But the thing is that you can't deny receipts. And if it truly happened to you, then nobody can take that testimony away from you. You understand? I do see some comments in here because I have just been talking, but I just want you guys to be encouraged. Share what happened, right? But also share your journey to healing, through healing, right? So that way you can help those who are getting ready to go into it, those who are already through the healing process, and maybe you might bring something to their attention that maybe they had stuffed somewhere, forgot, or maybe they haven't tried certain therapy. Maybe they haven't gone to somebody, so maybe you might give somebody hope in areas that maybe they thought was hopeless. But I'm going to leave it here because my kids are now coming in and out, and I'm sure they want to ask me tons of questions. So I love you all. I hope this helped you in some kind of way. But this is not over. It's not over. It's just the beginning. And the voices who were silenced, they're going to come out and they're going to speak. But they're going to come out speaking from healing. Amen? And I'm not going to take credit for this because I've had people speak into my life that are on this process as well, this journey as well. So, so yeah, so thank you all. All right. Encourage one another. I love you.